commentaire. The honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I take the honourable member at his word that he says that the Government of Canada is extremely concerned about this situation. Like my friend who was a questioner previous, it would have been a little bit more believable had this expression of concern come a little bit earlier in the piece. Nevertheless, I take him at his word that the government is extremely concerned. So, therefore, the Government of Canada should be interacting with the Government of Sri Lanka. And I wonder if he could detail for the House the interactions that he's had or the Minister has had with the High Commissioner for Sri Lanka in Canada in the past 10 days or 2 weeks.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as I've stated, we have been concerned on this issue for a while. It is not an issue that it's an overnight. Yes, we have been engaged, as the government has stated. The Minister of Foreign Affairs even talked to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka as well. Of course, we are constantly engaged with the government, with the High Commissioner out here, whom we at any given time state to them that there is a necessary need for them to get down to dialogue. We were very unhappy when the Norway peace process was broken down and fighting got resumed, Mr. Speaker. But let's be realistic. There are two parties out here, and one party is calling for the breakup, while the other government we have a concern about human rights. So we are calling both parties to get onto the table, Mr. Speaker, and work for the betterment of Sri Lanka, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary. Resuming debate, the honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This conflict is a legacy of British colonialism. When the British occupied the island, when the island was then called Ceylon, they used the Tamil population, in effect, to protect British interests and preferenced the Tamil population over the Sinhala population. When independence came, the Sinhala majority decided that it was time to take back what was then Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, as its own, and implemented a number of laws which were reprehensible to the minority Tamil population. The consequence of that was that Tamil peoples were excluded from the civil service, or it was very difficult to get into the civil service. They were unable to access the higher education, or they were excluded from higher education. And these lists of difficulties and grievances and slights and injustices and outrages built and built and built until we have what we have today, which is a civil war which has raged over the last 30 plus years, the consequence of which is now that we are facing a very, very grave crisis, a grave international crisis. The conflict has been characterized by outrageous acts against humanity by both sides. Human Rights Watch has said that both sides have committed atrocities, and there are no innocents among the combatants. And meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the people of Sri Lanka suffer. There was a window of opportunity a few years ago, and I had the great honor to go to Sri Lanka with the Honourable David Kilgour, then Secretary of State for Asia. We, I believe, were the first official delegation from Canada to visit that country. We talked to pretty well anyone who would talk to us about the possibilities of a devolved form of federation and other political solutions. It was pretty obvious to us after we returned that there was not a real serious interest in, by either side, in a dialogue about a form of federation which would accommodate to the most legitimate concerns of both the minority population and the majority population. Was therefore, we would listen to the peace monitors, we'd listen to the people who are frustrated by the continuous violations of the ceasefire, and we were driven to the conclusion that it would be only a matter of time before the hostilities would resume. Then along came the tsunami. The tsunami exacerbated the difficulties. One of my best friends was a head of an aid agency there, well-funded, well-intentioned, well-motivated, well-staffed, and they gave up after 18 months of frustration with both sides and the failure to be able to deliver their aid and their relief. Mr. Speaker, this is a small island. It's about 23 million people. And it's about a third of the minority population and two-thirds of majority population in rough terms. There is no solution to this war. This conflict cannot be won militarily. Even if the government of Sri Lanka is under the illusion that it can win this war militarily, and as we watch this conflict unfold on our TV screens, in our newspapers, and in various Sri Lankan media, it appalls us all. But this is not a winnable war. No one will win the war. If the government of Sri Lanka thinks it will win the war, it won't. Everyone on the day after this conflict subsides, it won't end, the day after a conflict subsides, there will be still millions and millions of Tamil people looking for peace, for justice, for fairness, for access to their various government facilities. So, Mr. Speaker, what is the Government of Canada to do? There have been very good suggestions from the member for Toronto Centre, the member from Mount Royal. I won't repeat them. I would have wished that the Government of Canada had taken a more activist role, and it is regrettable that it takes events such as demonstrations on Parliament Hill and emergency debates to prod them into some action. I have the great honour to represent one of the largest Tamil constituencies in the country, and it has been a very personal exercise for me to listen to literally dozens and dozens of people talk about the tragedy that is in their families and in their homes. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the Government of Canada to act along the lines that the member from Mount Royal and the member from Toronto Centre has urged them. Thank you.
Comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his comments. One of the things I think it's important to lay down here is that as recently as October, there was an effort by the other side, in this case by the Tamils, to enter into, by the Tamil Tigers, to enter into an offer to have a truce. We now have what is really a war of attrition. We have the government saying basically they're going to wipe out the Tamil Tigers. We all know the history of that. It never happens. It makes things worse. So my question to the member, Mr. Speaker, is what does he think of this, the government's, the Sri Lankan government, notion that they can actually wipe out the rebel force and actually have peace in Sri Lanka?
The honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The concern that I have, Mr. Speaker, is that the government of Sri Lanka is under some huge illusion that if they somehow or another eliminate the Tamil Tigers, drive them into the sea, eliminate them as a force, that somehow or another the conflict will be finished. That's utter naive nonsense. And it is delusional on the part of the government of Sri Lanka to think that somehow or another the injustices that the Tamil people have suffered over the years will disappear by virtue of driving the Tamil Tigers into the sea. That's nonsense, and I would urge our government to express that in the most forceful of terms to not only the High Commissioner here, who's just down the road, and I was rather surprised that the Parliamentary Secretary could tell us of no incidents in which they had talked to the High Commissioner, but also to the Foreign Affairs Minister, directly to their counterparts. This is something that needs to be expressed in the most forceful terms to the government. Thank you.
Resuming